Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. So we talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Roach Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. I don't think that there has been one program in college basketball that has been as busy in the transfer portal as the St. John's Red Storm, and they have landed yet another transfer portal addition. Glenn Taylor Jr., the former Oregon State forward, has decided to transfer to the St. John's Red Storm. I'm going to go over how important I think Glenn Taylor Jr. could be for St. John's next season, and whether I think St. John's has a team that could be competitive in the Big East, or do they need more players on their roster for next season. Now, looking at St. John's basketball, they have hired Rick Pitino, a Hall of Fame head coach, to be their head coach in this offseason, and Rick Pitino, his effect is already at hand. You are already seeing what he is doing with the St. John's roster. He is bringing in so many players you can't even keep count, and St. John's has many more roster spots still available, with 4 to be exact. They still have 4 roster spots available, but Rick Pitino is filling these spots up with really good basketball players. And Glenn Taylor Jr., the former Oregon State forward, he is 6'6", 200 pounds, and he's from Las Vegas. So being able to get a guy from the West Coast, born and raised in the West Coast, going all the way to the East Coast to play for St. John's is huge, and it goes to show you what Rick Pitino is building with the Red Storm. You knew players were going to want to play for Rick Pitino because he's a fantastic head coach, and he's had so much success in college basketball, but who knew he was going to be able to bring in this much talent already. And Glenn Taylor, he is a solid player. He averaged 11.6 points per game, 3.7 rebounds, and 2.2 assists on a really bad Oregon State team this past season. Unfortunately for Oregon State, it does not seem to be getting any better from here. Losing Glenn Taylor, one of your best players from this past season, that is really tough for Wayne Tinkle and company for the Beavers. But hopefully for Oregon State, they can find a way to get it turned around. But Rick Pitino, he's turning around St. John's, and Glenn Taylor, again, is a really good basketball player, potentially the best portal player he's brought in. He shot 43.1% from the field this past season, 30.8% from the three-point line, and 80.1% from the free throw line. So that's a good sign that he shoots well at the free throw line and pretty solid overall from the field. He's not a great three-point shooter. Maybe that will improve being surrounded by better players at St. John's, but I do think that he does struggle to shoot threes, but he's good at the free throw line. He's good from the field, and I think that Glenn Taylor overall, the name recognition that he has, being a really solid basketball player in the Pac-12 at the Power 6 level on a bad basketball team, he'll be able to come over and make a quick adjustment over St. John's. In the Big East, yes, the Big East is rugged and tough, but I feel like Glenn Taylor is a great addition for Rick Pitino, and potentially the best portal addition he's brought in, unless Rick Pitino might not be done yet. There's other guys he's looking at. If he could land somebody like Mackenzie Mbako, the former Duke commit, he's looking at St. John's, or even Brady Dunlap from the high school recruiting ranks. If he's able to land any of those guys, then that would be huge for St. John's. But you definitely don't want to get ahead of yourself, and what Rick Pitino has already brought in is incredible. Besides Glenn Taylor, who he's just brought in, Rick Pitino was able to bring 3 players from Iona over to St. John's, and Dennis Jenkins, a guy that averaged 16 points per game, a 6'3" guard for Iona this past season, and that is huge for Rick Pitino to have that much draw with his players that they want to follow him to St. John's. Yes, it's a step up, but these players trust Rick Pitino. They want to follow him wherever he goes and be able to go to a bigger program and show that they can play at the highest level of college basketball. Cruz Davis, he averaged 6.5 points per game this past season for Iona. He's a 6'3" guard as well, so both of those guys will definitely factor into the rotation. Dennis Jenkins will probably start, and Cruz Davis could come off the bench, or maybe he might start alongside Dennis Jenkins. But again, huge for Rick Pitino to bring these guys over. And yes, you could say the adjustment period might be tough for them to go from Iona to St. John's, but especially a guy like Dennis Jenkins, I think, will easily be able to make that jump to the Power 6 level because he was already a great player at Iona. And Quinn Slazinski, he's a guy that averaged 11.3 points per game. He's a 6'9" forward as well. And Quinn Slazinski, he started his career at Louisville, then went to Iona, and then finally on to the St. John's Red Storm. Followed Rick Pitino wherever he went, and again, shows you that player commitment with these players, that they want to continue to follow Rick Pitino to his new stop at St. John's. I think that is huge overall, and I think all 3 players will have a big impact for the St. John's Red Storm next season. Probably Dennis Jenkins the most, then Quinn Slazinski, then Cruz Davis, but they all will have big roles for St. John's next season to potentially help them compete in the Big East. But that's not all. Joel Soriano, he is back from the St. John's roster this past season. He's a 6'11" center, and he was the best player on St. John's roster this past season. He averaged 15.2 points per game and 11.9 rebounds. He was a double-double machine. You look at some of the best centers in college basketball, like Trace Jackson Davis, Hunter Dickinson, Oscar Sheway, Zach Edey, and even guys like Adama Sanogo in the Big East. But Joel Soriano was definitely underrated because St. John's wasn't the best basketball team in the world last year, but they were solid, and they definitely were a team that was trying to compete in the Big East with Mike Anderson at head coach. But Joel Soriano was a beast on the glass, and if he plays at as high of a level or even improves this next season for St. John's and Rick Pitino, that will be huge for their chances of being able to make the NCAA tournament next year. Naheem Aline's a transfer portal guard from UConn that's coming. He also played at Virginia Tech as well, and when he played for the Hokies, he averaged around 11 points per game. But Naheem Aline, he was on the national championship winning team for UConn this past year. He's a 6'4" guard, and yes, he only averaged 5 points per game off the bench, but he also was surrounded by so much talent at UConn. I think he could potentially come in and start for St. John's next season, up his points per game up to around double digits again. He's a really solid player, but was on a fantastic team last season in UConn that won the national title, so he has NCAA tournament experience, which I think is always key when bringing in transfer portal players. Sean Conway, he's the final transfer portal addition from VMI, and he is a 6'5" guard who averaged 12.1 points per game for VMI this past season. I think he will definitely be another solid depth piece for the Red Storm this season, but look at all of these players that Rick Pitino has brought in. I know that the Red Storm can sell the fact that they have holes on their roster, they have playing time available, roster spots available, but still, the fact that Rick Pitino has done this good of a job in the transfer portal, not just bringing in guys that are not that good and just being able to fill the roster, he is filling up the roster with really talented players, some better than others, especially players like Glenn Taylor and also guys like Dennis Jenkins and Naheem Aline, but all of these players are huge for St. John's next season, and getting Joel Soriano back will definitely be able to help make St. John's competitive in the Big East next season. Now, Posh Alexander and Dylan Adewusu both are tough losses. Posh Alexander averaged 10 points per game. He was a 6-foot guard for the Red Storm this past season. He transferred to Butler, and Dylan Adewusu, that's a really tough loss. He averaged 9 points per game this past season. He was a 6'4", really burly guard for the Red Storm this past season, but he transferred to Seton Hall. But I still feel like that the net additions are a net positive for Rick Pitino versus what they have lost, and St. John's is not done yet. If they could land Mackenzie Mbako, Brady Dunlap, or some of these other players that Rick Pitino was looking at, I think it's very possible that they could land these guys. They're also looking at Jordan Dingle in the transfer portal as well. If somehow Rick Pitino can land 2 of those 3 players, or even just 1, and a couple other guys that could surface really late in the transfer portal window, then I think that St. John's could definitely be a team that's competitive in the Big East next season. That is definitely going to be an NCAA tournament team, and Rick Pitino, what he is doing, you knew he was going to be able to turn around St. John's more than likely, but I didn't know that he would turn around by this much. But looking at St. John's roster right now, I don't know if they're going to be a team that will be in the top half of the Big East. I think they will compete for an NCAA tournament bid. I'm not 100% sure if they will make the tournament, but if he's able to bring in some more transfer portal players or get a high school recruit like Brady Dunlap or Mackenzie Mbako, then I think that definitely St. John's is pushing more and more that they will be an NCAA tournament team this next season, and going to show you the Rick Pitino effect is on, and the Red Storm could be in the national spotlight for the first time in around 20 years. They have not been a good basketball program in a long time, but they have a lot of history, and Rick Pitino, he fits right in St. John's. He is a Big East guy. He is a Northeastern kind of coach, and he definitely fits right in at St. John's, potentially for his last stop as the head coach in college basketball. But bringing in Glenn Taylor, I think he's the biggest transfer portal addition so far. Dennis Jenkins is a close second, but Glenn Taylor, he's a guy that averaged 12 points per game for Oregon State this past season. He's going to be a really solid addition. He's a great forward, and I think that even though he wasn't on a good basketball team this past season for Oregon State, I think he'll have a good season for St. John's this year, and he'll definitely be a potential leader on next year's squad for St. John's. So Rick Pitino's doing a great job. I feel like Glenn Taylor will definitely be able to help St. John's be able to push for an NCAA tournament. If Rick Pitino's not done yet in the transfer portal and the high school recruiting, then maybe St. John's could be an even better basketball team than we're seeing right now and could be a dangerous team in the Big East next season. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Comment down below what you think about Glenn Taylor Jr. transferring from Oregon State to St. John's. How much of an impact you think he will have on the St. John's roster. How good of a job you think Rick Pitino's doing in the transfer portal, and whether you think he'll be able to land some of these other guys that St. John's is looking at to make their team better next season. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I'll see you next time.